I think we'll get started. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Lisa Leota, the Associate Athletic Director here at Canisius College. I'm going to moderate the webinar tonight, and thank you all for sending your questions in advance. If you have questions throughout the session tonight, please utilize the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. If you hover your mouse over the bottom, the toolbar will show, and there's a Q&A section. We plan to answer majority of those questions that were sent in throughout the session, and then field some live questions at the end here. So I'm going to turn it over to Director of Athletics, Bill Maher, who will lead us through the first portion of tonight's webinar. Bill?
Thank you, Lisa, and welcome everybody. Appreciate you joining us this evening. Wherever you may be, we know we've got some people from each coast of the country here and international as well, so we appreciate you taking the time to be with us this evening. Well, this is a session that we normally do during orientation each year. And we are going to do that session during orientation as well as that gets scheduled for the summer. But with the number of questions that our coaching staff had, we wanted to take this opportunity to communicate with folks to the best of our ability at this point in time and explain where some things are here at Canisius College and Canisius Athletics and try and provide a little bit of clarity for folks where possible. We're joined tonight at the beginning of this session by President John Hurley. John's one of our greatest supporters here at Canisius Athletics and involved in everything we do, of course, on campus and within our program. Fortunate to have him here tonight, so I would turn over him for a quick introduction. Thanks, John.
Well, thanks very much, Bill. And I'd like to welcome all of our new students, both entering freshmen and transfer students, and welcome to Canisius College Athletics. We believe that the athletic program here is a strong part of the Canisius brand, if you will. It focuses on the development of healthy minds and bodies, and we hope that your experience with the athletics at Canisius is a very positive one. When I was asked whether I wanted to participate tonight, I readily accepted the invitation because I know that there are a lot of questions out there about, number one, what is going to happen with instruction at Canisius, living arrangements, and athletics as well. And I had a chance to look at many of your questions before tonight's session. I would like to assure the parents and the students, as the president of the college, that the decisions that we're making and the plans that we are making are driven by a concern for the safety and welfare of our students and faculty and staff. And so if it comes to a question of safety or athletic competition, we are always going to opt for safety. And that's especially important now, given the great concern over the COVID-19 pandemic. And I will tell you that we are in the midst of some very, very intense planning to determine how we can resume face-to-face instruction, live instruction on the campus with students and residents, and offering the full range of activities for our students. Unfortunately, as of tonight, we don't have all the answers. Our athletic conference, in which I'm a very active participant, as are all the presidents, will be meeting next week. But the plans, even for the fall, are still coming into focus as we watch developments from both the NCAA and at our conference level. But we are a very active participant in that whole process. We're and we're looking at what's going to be best for Canisius College and its students. And I want to give you my assurance on that. So with that, I will just say welcome and the best of luck at Canisius. I look forward to greeting you personally on campus. We hope at the end of August. Bill?
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. And as John said, a lot of planning going on at various different levels, certainly from our standpoint, both in sports medicine and among our conference. We are at this point focused on the goal of August 31st being the date that we can have students back on campus and be ready to go. A lot of things have to fall in place for that. I hope everyone understands that, but that remains, in athletics, we always are looking for goals, and that remains our target at this point in time. So what I'd like to do is have the group that's joined with us tonight. I'll introduce them. Each of us will take a couple minutes to just talk very broadly on a couple main key points that we're dealing with, reminders for all of you. And then after that, we can get into questions, both that, as Lisa said, that have been submitted in advance, and those that may come through in the chat, or excuse me, the Q&A feature. So the first person that's joining us tonight, Erica Segrin. She's our Assistant Athletic Director for Compliance. She handles all of our NCAA issues and our eligibility questions, so she'll be joining us this evening. Al Pilato is our Associate Director of Student Life, and he is the individual who's going to be helping us, and he's our go-to person from a standpoint of housing on campus and trying to get the answers resolved over there. He's always been great to us, and my hope is that he can provide some context for everybody. Andy Smith is our Director of Sports Medicine. Andy's been very involved in this process from day one, and will be intimately involved in our recovery plans as we continue to think about what things will be like as we come back in the fall. This spring and this summer have been very different than any we've ever had, and certainly our fall will be different as well. We all are going to have to be able to adjust to that and be prepared to make individual decisions, but certainly in doing so, be thinking about the collective well-being of everybody. So what I'd like to ask first as we go through these couple of sessions, Erica would start up first, and she with some reminders from an NCAA compliance standpoint. Erica?
Thanks, Bill. So I wanted to talk to everybody tonight about the Eligibility Center. By now, all of our student athletes should have accounts within the Eligibility Center and should have logged in and know their password. So there's two things that I need you to complete before coming on campus next fall. The first thing is requesting your final amateurism. A couple people might have a couple lingering questions from the NCAA, some follow-up questions that they need to respond to. However, for most people, it's as simple as going in and clicking one button. The second thing is your academic documents. So these actually come from your high school and go directly to the Eligibility Center. But I ask that you stay on top of your high schools, communicate with your guidance counselors, and ask them to send in your official transcripts and your proof of graduation. You actually don't even need to wait to send in your official transcripts, because the NCAA is providing a little bit of flexibility this year because of COVID when it comes to certifying your initial academic eligibility. So also what they really need is your freshman, sophomore, and junior year grades, and they can certify you right off of that. That relief is really only eligible for spring 2020 and summer 2020 graduates. So everybody else that may have graduated before, you still have to submit your final high school transcripts, your proof of graduation, and your test scores. For spring 2020 and summer 2020 graduates, your test scores are now optional. However, please feel free to submit them using code 9999 directly from the testing center if you wish to do that as well. If you're having a little bit of difficulty working with your high schools, the NCAA is providing a little bit of flexibility in submitting some of these documents. So please reach out to me. My email address is on gogriffs.com, or please reach out to your coaching staff and they can reach out to me, and I can work with your high school and the NCAA directly in getting some of these documents completed.
Thank you, Erica. And we'll be able to have some questions for Erica at the end if there are specific questions related to the NCAA compliance. Next up, I'd like to have Al Pilato from our Residence Life staff. He would like to address some of the topical issues from a residence life and housing standpoint.
Thanks, Bill, and welcome everybody. I'm glad to be a part of the conversation here tonight. And I'd like to just go over a few of the main things that in student life we're working on to prepare for the fall that I think are important for you to know about right now. The first piece is we've extended our housing application deadline until July 1st. So that will give people, opportunity to still submit applications or to go in and modify their application as we make decisions about how we're going to use the space in the fall, request roommates, etc. So that new deadline is July 1st. The second piece I wanted to touch on was how are we using the space here in the residence halls for the fall? And there are a couple different scenarios we're working on right now and depending on what happens with the governor and local health officials, that will help shape the final decision of what we do. But here are the two scenarios we're looking at right now. The first one would be all freshmen would be assigned to a single room in their freshman year. So all of the double rooms now would hold one, all of the 4-person suites would hold 2 people. If that decision is made, and that's the plan we use, I just want you to know up front that there is no price upgrade for a single. So if you're assigned to a double room that is now a single, you're still going to pay the double rate, and that would be the same case for the suites. it will be the four-person rate that will be paid even if there are only 2 people in the suite. The second scenario is sort of a hybrid between the single model and what we used to do in the past. And that's where we would, if we are granted what's called a family unit status for the suites in the residence halls, if we get that status, we could then put 4 people in a suite and have single rooms where the doubles now exist. So that is another model we're looking at, depending again on what requirements we face as we open up in the fall. So those are the 2 scenarios we're looking at right now as far as how we're going to use the space for the fall. The last piece I wanted to just touch on before I go back to Bill is the check-in process. In years gone by, everybody would show up on the same day, and literally hundreds and hundreds of people would check in a very small window before orientation. Obviously, in today's environment, that's not something that is safe or something that we're going to do. So we're looking at a rolling check-in. Exactly how long that rolling check-in is, we're still kind of tweaking right now. But for example, we may say that from August 1st until the end of the month, people could sign up by appointment and move in on any day that's convenient for them during that period. They couldn't stay here, but they could move in, set up their rooms, and then go back home and then return for orientation and the first day of classes. So we're working through that now. We're not sure, again, if it will be every day of the month, each weekend in August. We're kind of working through that. So once we get the logistics all hammered out, then we're going to let everybody know what exactly to expect for the fall. Obviously, I'm prepared to answer a lot of questions in the Q&A, so feel free then to ask anything that you might have on your mind. But also, I would recommend feeling free to email me at any time at pilato1@canisius.edu. I'd be happy to talk with you, answer any questions, and help you in any way I can.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate that very much. Next up, I'd like to have Andy Smith, our Director of Sports Medicine, cover a couple of key topics that are going to impact each one of our incoming student athletes as we move through our process here at Canisius.
Good evening, everyone. I'm assuming you can see that, Lisa?
Not yet.
Okay, I don't think I have screen share.
Should have. Uh-oh.
I apologize.
Here, I'll pull it up.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, guys. Sorry about the delay.
Dry run work didn't work here. Good evening, everyone. And as Lisa pulls it up, if you have a pen and paper, I'm going to go through a quick PowerPoint with you. I work better that way. With that, I'm going to give you a few addresses and emails that will be probably helpful here for you. Okay. First of all, I just want to reiterate what President Hurley said. The overall student athlete experience, we're going to look to ensure that as best we can, but certainly with health and safety at the forefront. To give a quick overview of what we do here, the Center for Athletic Training is the main sports medicine center in the Kessler Athletic Center. We have 7 certified athletic trainers and 2 team physicians that service us. We've looked at it, and we're very lucky. Not all colleges can say this, that we have a very cohesive working relationship with our student health center. We're looking at making the Center for Athletic Training kind of the healthy place where we would not look for student athletes who are ill to come there to be seen. We would look for them to make appointments. We would certainly assist them to start with our student health center in that. And again, I can't reiterate enough that how good we get along with them and work with them and how helpful it is in a pandemic like this. It's going to look a little bit different this year. We're going to have a new mode of operation. We're looking at, in the past, they often would just call myself or staff, say, I'm sick, can I come over, or just show up. We're going to avoid that. We're going to do and really have to re-educate and educate our new student athletes and returning student athletes that there is to be a call first mentality, to call the certified athletic trainer their team is assigned, or go to the student health center, set up at the student health center, with that. That's going to be really important for us to avoid the spread of this if there is potential of positives on campus. There will be a bit more social responsibility, and I hope you talk to your son or daughter about this with that. Canisius College is in Buffalo, New York. We're in Erie County in New York State, and we need to go by their directives. where you may live currently may not be doing social distancing as extensive as we are, or the use of face masks. There will be the social responsibility expectation of using social distancing and the use of a face mask whenever in public. There'll be more education coming on forthcoming. Next slide. The new student portal, and my son, I'm glad to say, is an incoming freshman as well, so I'm fairly familiar with this, and I share some of your questions and concerns. When you do get that, once you've deposited, the Canisius alert, including emergency contacts and your insurance card, will be very important with this. The Canisius alert would give you the capability to either text or email if there were emergencies on campus, and it's very, very helpful. One question that has come up quite a bit is when you see that in the student portal with physicals, there is a physical requirement for the college. Non-athletes are allowed to, if you may have seen it, there's an alternative health form. Non-athletes are allowed to fill that out. Athletes will still be held to the NCAA requirement that a physical must be within 6 months of the start of their physical activity. We understand that may cause some problems. What I've been reading quite a bit is many primary care physicians are actually not as busy as was anticipated. So I would suggest getting that appointment as soon as possible with that. The form is both on the portal and on the Student Health Center link. Should issues arrive, we'll make on-campus efforts. We'll wait to see how that pans out with students. It's ideal to have them see their primary care physician who's followed them in the past. All physical exams and vaccination records should go directly to student health. We have the student athletes sign a waiver that we have access to those, and it works out very well. If you have questions, there's an open link here, open email for general questions to student health at health@canisius.edu. ARM software is something the Department of Athletics uses. It's an online system for required forms, information, and education. It's both from compliance, from recruiting, and we use it for our sports medicine forms. It'll be sent out sometime in June to early July. For us, it's comprehensive health questionnaires reviewed by staff. There may be follow-up care recommended. You're given the ability to put your insurance card copies in there. There is an educational component. And one thing to point out, we do some concussion education and sickle cell trait education. Sickle cell trait for Canisius College, we recommend it. It is not required. And within that educational component is information on who should get tested for that. There is also a release with this that for your physical, for your son or daughter to have the ability to get the copy of your physical. That is the one form, if your son or daughter is a minor, that they must have the parent's signature with, which is very important that we can get that before they get on campus. Next up, and I know some questions have come out about this, with the college's insurance and medical expenses policy, we do offer a secondary medical insurance plan, which has a disappearing deductible, which means there'll be nothing out of pocket for athletic injuries incurred while you're participating in athletics. In all instances, your primary medical insurance is utilized first, and the secondary plan kicks in secondarily. Medical expenses for illnesses, and we're being much more vocal about this now, or specifically COVID-19 illnesses, are not covered by that plan and are the responsibility of the student athlete. We're highly recommending checking with your carrier for illness and COVID coverage, especially at this time. This is especially important for Canadian student athletes, as their plan may or may not cover illnesses, specifically COVID, in the United States. I think it's imperative to go ahead and look at your plan, see if there's a travel plan that would cover it, and if not, the college does require this is a little confusing, non-Canadian international students, they're required to have an insurance plan for the college. It has been opened up this year to Canadian students and student athletes. I would highly recommend this. There is a cost to it. It's approximately $1,600 US dollars. The benefits are listed. The address is right here, studentinsurance.com/client/596. That will take you directly to the Canisius page through Wellfleet, the carrier. The plan does cover testing and vaccination when available, and the benefits are listed on that website. Next we are held to both the CDC, New York State, as well as Erie County directives on this. And within the student portal, this will come up, but what to bring to campus, it is very important because we'll have the face mask directive to bring a face mask. It would be ideal to have a thermometer, bring any medications, and then also personal hand sanitizer. Obviously, we'll supply hand sanitizer and disinfectant, but I think it's very important to understand they won't always be on campus. I think that's very important. And then finally, we will be providing educational materials on ARMS, on Go Griffs, and Canisius.edu. My email is smitha@canisius.edu. Please feel free to contact me. Please be patient. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, and I'll do my best to answer any questions at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. And, you know, what I'll do is just talk very, you know, at a very high level here for a couple minutes on what we've got with, from an overall athletic standpoint. Much of what John talked about and the targets that we have, and I know a lot of questions are specific by sport. I'm focusing a little bit more on fall seasons, winter seasons, spring seasons. And the first impact obviously is our fall season. So as athletic directors in the MAC, we're meeting at least 2 times a week to try and work our way through this. And I think the challenging part of any of this is we're waiting for final decisions to be made in a number of different areas in New York State, at the NCAA level, and certainly on campus to be able to move forward on some of these things. But what I said before, we are absolutely pointing toward an August return and to be in a position where we can compete in the fall. That is what our goal is, and that's what we talk about every day. Our governor of New York State has made the comment he would like to see sports back. That's a good thing for us. And I believe that things are trending in the right direction that will allow us to be able to be considering that we're going to be competing in the fall. I do think that the likelihood of a early August return is small. I've been telling our coaches that I think it's far more likely that we will be looking at the 3rd or 4th week of August, or perhaps on the first day of class. So I think we will try and get our athletes back on campus as soon as we can. Certainly there's a preseason acclimation process that all of our teams have to go through. And of course, all of our student athletes have been off campus since the middle of March. So there's a challenging reacclimation that has to happen. But in the spirit of what John and Andy have both talked about from a safety standpoint, we understand that there needs to be a ramp up there, and that's going to be factored into our planning. It's likely that we will have an abbreviated fall season. We are working right now with the NCAA, and the NCAA is very strongly considering finishing all NCAA championship competition around Thanksgiving. Not before Thanksgiving, but right around Thanksgiving, which would mean shortening the season by about a month. Many campuses are looking at different academic models, and that's what's driving some of that decision to try and minimize some travel and move people back off campus and back to home for at least those fall sports. So that's where the conversation is, and I know that's frustrating for many of you who are looking for hard and fast answers on some things. We certainly want to be able to give those to you as soon as we can. I had a meeting with all of our head coaches today, and I know they feel the same way. And we are spending a lot of time preparing for the different scenarios. What I've explained to you are what I believe are probably the more likely scenarios of a mid-August to late August return to campus, absolutely having a competition in the fall, and then certainly an earlier NCAA championship than we have had in the past. We will continue to work, as Andy said, with Erie County on these things. It is also my expectation that Erie County or the state of New York may put restrictions on the number of spectators or how big of a group can gather. And if that is imposed, we will have to work around that as well, work through that, I should say. And we are having conversations about how to best to do that in the fall and even into the winter seasons. And we'll take that one step at a time, but assuredly we're going to try and make sure that if we do have competition, that it's available to all of our parents and families, either in person to the number we're permitted or online for those competitions that we can put on our broadcast on ESPN3 or Mac.tv. So I'm sure that we know we've got a number of questions that apply to some of these things. I'll allow Lisa to go through those, but I think it's probably best now that we start the Q&A section of this. I've seen some questions come through already on the Q&A board, and there were the number of questions submitted earlier. So what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Lisa, and she'll moderate this, and she'll ask the questions to the different panelists.
Great, thank you, Bill. I guess we'll start with one of the questions that came in earlier this week. As a private college, how bound by public education protocol are you in regards to restarting college classes?
Yeah, so I think the point there is we are not bound by SUNY guidelines. So that is a very kind of distinction that we have. However, and the big however is that many of the decisions that the governor is going to make regarding phase 4 opening of college campuses and universities are going to govern all colleges and universities in the state. So while we are not bound to the state university system decisions, we certainly are going to be bound to the decisions made by the governor as they impact higher education.
Great. Thank you. Another question we got frequently is, are there any, for Bill, are there any plans of discontinuing any sport programs for this coming academic year?
Yeah, I've been asked that a number of times, and certainly I can understand the concern given what's happening nationally. But I can tell you that President Hurley and I have had a number of conversations, and we are not considering reducing sports at this point in time. I do not see that as a possibility. Our student athletes are an important and vital part of our incoming freshman class and our overall student body, and therefore their continued attendance at the college is really important to us. So no, I've said that definitively with a number of our coaches, and I can say that here, that is not something we're contemplating at this point in time.
Andy, I've got one for you, kind of twofold here. What will the COVID-19 testing procedures be like on campus? And are any resources being provided for contact tracing at the college in the event there are infections?
I'll answer the second one first. The Student Health Center staff, as well as my staff, are being certified through Johns Hopkins through a contract tracing certification. So that will be helpful in the event that we need to do some contact tracing. We are also making efforts in looking at logging who is at what practice, who is at what event, if we need to do that. So I think we're in a good spot to start with that. Again, though, it's uncharted territory, so we'll do our best to do that. On campus as well, you know, it's difficult. I read recently that the average college student has over 200 contacts in a day. We're hoping we can reduce that with that one. So we do have things in place. They're not set in stone as yet, though. The second part with testing, President Hurley recently sent out a campus update, and he stated the college's need for students, faculty, and staff to submit COVID-19 baseline testing before returning to campus, and the likelihood that periodic testing will go on throughout the semester. New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo will be making recommendations to New York's institutions of higher learning. I believe it's June 8th, which will likely give guidance on requirements in the area of testing. The college will communicate those requirements and the testing and timing needs once those are established.
Andy, can you elaborate on what phase of reopening New York is currently in, maybe the regional approach that we're taking?
New York has been in phase 1 since, I believe it was Thursday, about a week. We are in phase 1. I can't say I know exactly what we have to do to get to phase 2, but the cases in New York State, especially hospitalizations, have been much lower, which is a positive move.
Yeah, Andy, we're obviously in Western New York. We're in phase 1. Each area of the state is a little bit different. We are in phase 1. There's approximately 2 weeks in between phases, but that's not required. And higher education is in phase 4. So we certainly are several weeks away from phase 4. And here on campus, while I'm certainly in my office, there are no students on campus and very, very few people on campus. So we are not cleared to bring people back to work on campus at this point.
Bill, one question for you is, will athletic and academic scholarships be upheld if there are no sports this coming year?
Yes, as they were in the spring. We will continue forward with this. And if someone is receiving an academic scholarship or an athletic scholarship and there is not competition, we would not hold that against the student. Those awards would remain in force.
Great. Al, I got a few rolling in here for you. I'm going to start off with what will be the procedures for housekeeping within the residence halls? You mentioned some of your phases you talked about. How does that play into some of those plans you guys have created?
Yeah, we're working with housekeeping and facilities very closely as we develop the plan once students arrive here on the campus. But there will be a number of visits throughout the residence halls through a 24-hour period, deep cleans, and then additional spot checking, wiping down of all contact spots throughout the residence halls, entering and exiting the buildings. We're working on posted cleaning times, so it'll be very clear when housekeeping are doing deep cleans in the restrooms and showers, etc. Again, to limit contact and allow them to do what they need to do to make sure we're staying as safe as possible.
Along that, some folks are asking, you mentioned the rolling check-in. Has there been some consideration for those who might be farther away, and maybe some suggestion on the best avenue for them to schedule their move-in date?
Yeah, at least what I'm thinking may happen is a lot of the local residents will be moving in earlier in the summer, is what I'm thinking, and then going back home. I'm anticipating some of the further, the traveling residents to start making appointments near the end of the month. But as always is the case, anyone who has a particular challenge or needs some additional help certainly can reach out to me. I'm very flexible in trying to work to make sure that everybody is taken care of within the parameters they have to work within. So people can always reach out to me and talk on an individual basis also.
Great, thank you. The other question relating to your statement is, does the campus have the capacity to actually have all singles and doubles, or is this single double related just to freshmen?
Yeah, the single approach is really just for freshmen right now. The fortunate thing for us in our upper class areas, almost all of the housing is single bedrooms already. So the apartments all have their own bedrooms mostly and multiple bathrooms within the apartments. So we're just focusing right now with the single approach in the freshman area, and we do have the capacity to do that.
Thanks so much, Al. Next question we got a few times here for you, Bill, is how will spring's senior student athletes being allowed back to campus over fifth year affect the incoming freshman class?
Yeah, so as I'm sure most people saw, it was widely published, the NCAA did afford another season of competition to those students who had their years cut short. And the college has worked to provide an opportunity for those students who wish to return to do that. We think that's the right thing to do. We believe that that's important for those student athletes to experience that. Like all your sons and daughters, I know they certainly had their senior year interrupted, and some of these students have certainly had that happen to them as well. At this point in time, we don't have a significant number of them that have committed to come back. I think the number is about 6 over our 20 sport programs. So the number will be limited, but we do believe that that's the right thing to do. How will it impact the freshmen? It certainly is going to mean that there'll be a couple more people on the roster that maybe weren't going to be there. But nevertheless, in athletics, people are competitive, of course, and they're going to have to earn their spots. And I think that there's going to be the opportunity for every student to be able to play. But I also know that there's some concern on that. But we have welcomed them back. They are certainly going to be a few of them that'll be on the rosters, but I do not anticipate it being a significant number because most of our students have other things that are planned in their lives, whether it be jobs or graduate school or other things. So many of them have made the decision to move on, but a few have, and the number is relatively low at this point in time.
So along those lines, do you anticipate any changes to team schedules or travel procedures due to COVID-19? And can you outline what some of those changes might be?
Yeah, I do expect changes. We're going to be facing any number of challenges, and fiscal challenges are part of that. I'm sure if you've read anything nationally, people talk about it, and we certainly are dealing with that here. We talked about our goal to preserve the student experiences, and we certainly want to try and preserve competitive opportunities wherever possible. But I do think that there's going to be impact across all of our sport programs. What do I see those impacts being? Minimizing, if not eliminating, air travel this year. Trying to play certainly a more regional schedule where possible in the non-conference. And we have agreed as a conference that we certainly want to make our conference play primary. That would be more important than non-conference play. So certainly making sure that we can get those competitions in would be the most important piece for us as a league. But I do see there are going to be changes. Changes are going to come in travel. Changes are going to come potentially in schedules because like the fall sports, I see those schedules being compressed a little bit more. But we are going to do everything we can to preserve those competitive opportunities for our students where possible.
Great. Thank you. Erica, this I think you can answer. Related to competition, if competition does not occur this year, does the athlete become redshirt eligible? what do you foresee the NCAA might land on some of this going forward?
Yeah, so as Bill kind of mentioned, I know there's a lot of information that circulates on social media that you read. So I guess the difference between the spring sport athletes is they had actually competed in games. So that's why we had to give them a waiver to get their year back. If you come in the fall and you never participate in a competition, you don't play for 1 second of one game, you preserve your year and you have now not used a season of eligibility. So typically you have four seasons of eligibility to be played in 5 years. The spring sport athletes were granted a 6th year, and they were granted that additional year to compete. So we will see how things play out in the fall and where we will be after that.
Thank you. I think Andy and Erica can help on this next question here. If classes do not start until the fall, meaning no summer workout sessions, will there still be an opportunity to work out on campus with staff sometime during this summer?
I'll start with that. As of now, student athletes will not be permitted to participate in any athletic activity on Canisius's campus until the college is completely reopened. I know Erica can provide some insight from the NCAA perspective on that as well.
Yeah, so actually last week the NCAA did come out and say that they will not be allowing basketball and football to return for summer athletic activities through June 30th. This was to create a more fair playing field across the country, but as things start loosening up with the NCAA, as Andy mentioned before, we still do have to follow local and state government guidelines as well as MAC guidelines and in our own institutions.
Yeah, the challenging part there is, and we get this question from our coaches every day, trust me, is when can we have kids back on campus? And at this point in time, it's not permissible for us to do that. That's when I gave the dates earlier. I talked about mid-August to the end of August. That's what I'm hearing from most of the schools in our conference in their individual states, that they're looking at mid to late August is when they expect to be able to invite students back to campus. And that continues to be our target.
Thank you all. Let's see, I think here we go, got one for Al. What happens if my student gets sick with COVID and lives on campus?
All right, great question. And the answer is going to depend in part on where you're from. If you're a local resident, we are going to ask anyone who is either in isolation or needs quarantine to do that at home. So we have isolation and quarantine spaces on campus that are very limited, and we'll be holding those for people who cannot go back home, international students or people who perhaps might be in California, harder to go home. So through student health, decisions will be made on if somebody needs isolation or if we're moving to the next level of quarantine. But when students check in this year, we're going to ask everybody to sign a waiver that will allow us to talk directly to parents from student health so we can communicate what these findings are and then kind of coordinate the process of going home within a 24-hour period to start the isolation or to start the quarantine.
Thank you. Bill, maybe you can help me on this one, or anybody can join in. What option will Canadian student athletes have if the borders do not reopen or if there are restrictions?
Well, we have that same question with a bunch of countries of where our student athletes are coming from. So we have had some discussions with government officials about that question, and they seem to be positive about the fact that the travel back to the United States for international students will be relaxed as we get closer to this. However, I think the question remains, if a border is closed, our ability to tell a government to open a border is limited. But certainly there are a lot of students throughout just for Canada, for example, there are many, many students from Canada that are trying to get to the United States for classes, and that will happen in the fall. That I do believe that they're going to find a way to do that with the I-20s to allow those students to cross the border. I think there would probably be some restrictions on border crossing back and forth after they've made the initial crossing, but that's what I'm understanding. There's certainly a lot of discussion on it in Washington, and our international students office has been talking about the fact that they see that relaxing, although at this moment, many of those borders are closed.
Great, thank you. Bill, another one for you. What will the spring sports seasons look like during the fall semester, i.e. practice, games, competitions, etc.?
Yeah, I think we're going to be in a situation where there's going to be perhaps if we can practice, the teams are going to practice. Those kids have been off for a long time. There's going to be restrictions that are going to be placed on some of that for all of our teams, just from a standpoint of access to the training room, how many people are in a locker room, things of that nature are going to impact some of those practices. But as long as we are permitted to practice as a team, then we're going to have those activities going on for our student athletes. There will be other outside forces that are going to impact that. It may not be as convenient. Students may not be able to just show up 5-10 minutes before practice to be ready to go. It may take a little bit more coordination, but we are working to try and provide those competitive and those practice opportunities for our students whenever we can.
Great. Al, so some of our incoming student athletes already have their roommates, and if we split into singles, do you anticipate placing them near them, or are you still kind of determining how you would delegate that out?
Yeah, my goal would be to try and keep everybody as close to who they want to, room with as possible if we go to all singles. The nice thing about the system we have now is I can see all of the requests as they originally came in. So if we decide we're moving in that direction, that'll give me a good tool to work with to try and keep people as close together as possible.
Great, thank you. So what will happen if my student athlete is uncomfortable traveling out of state to a public setting with so many unknowns?
Yeah, I think John addressed that in his opening remarks, that student safety is going to be primary in this one. So if a student is uncomfortable traveling with a team, then they will not be forced to go. We will certainly talk with our coaching staffs about that, and we will understand what the issues are. But if a student doesn't want to go or they feel unsafe, then they will not be forced to go. If it can be done safely, our teams are going to go, and we're going to compete. That's a commitment we've made within our conference, of course, and we certainly want to be able to do that. And I know our teams are going to want to try and be able to be competitive. But if there's an individual student who, for whatever reason, feels as though they're uncomfortable with that, we would honor that request and they would not have to go.
Along those lines of travel, maybe Andy or Bill, how will we address travel for meets, games in regard to testing?
I'll take that. What the plan is for athletics is we will do daily symptom checks and temperature before they are allowed, probably into the facility, definitely before they're allowed to practice or participate. Anytime we travel, they will also have to do that before they get on a bus. Anyone who has symptoms or has a temperature will not be allowed to travel. In regard to testing, if they were symptomatic and required testing, they would not be allowed to travel. It's difficult to answer that with testing because I'm not certain what the question actually means. Is it that they were tested for being symptomatic? Absolutely not. If it was just general testing, it will be on a case-by-case basis. But if there's any concern about their safety, the prevention of the spread, they would not be allowed to travel.
And I think this, this goes directly to this new world we're living in, if you will, that most of our students, and I've had plenty of them that have come through, and if they've had a cold or they've been sick, they want to suck it up and they want to play. They don't want to lose that competitive opportunity. I think what we would ask all of the, the student athletes on the call, the parents that are on the call, we're going to need to try and make sure that we change that paradigm a little bit as it relates to this, that if you begin to feel sick, we need you, in the best interest of everybody, to kind of heed that advice of stay alone, make a phone call, figure out exactly what's going on. And if you are not sick, then great, let's get you back. But let's be a little bit more cautious in this. And that's a classic example of someone who gets their temperature taken and they say, I feel fine. Well, if the temperature says you're high, then that's going to dictate the decision. And I know that's going to frustrate people, but we're going to have to go that way.
And there'll be a learning curve as well. You can't run over to practice in the heat and expect me to take your temperature and look for a positive result.
Bill, maybe you or I can answer this question. What is the possibility of having a mixed mode class, i.e. start in person, then switching to online after Thanksgiving? I know you're on the recovery task force. What's that conversation look like right now?
Yeah, the faculty have been instructed that they should be preparing for their courses to be done both in person and online, just in case. The very strong likelihood is that everybody wants to be in class, but even if we are in class in the fall, I think it's unlikely that we're going to be able to be in class with full classrooms. There's going to be modifications that are in place. I would say, as an aside, while many people would prefer in-person instruction, and I know I do as well, our student athletes did exceptionally well this semester from an academic standpoint. They have the highest grade point average they've ever had, and all of our teams had above a 3.0 grade point average, which has never happened in my time here. So they adapted very well. Our coaching staff helped support them to be adapting very well. But nevertheless, I think the expectation is that we will be having some sort of a interruption in a traditional course delivery. And I think that there is some discussion about hybrid courses, which would mean the course would be taught online for a portion of the class and in person for a portion of the class, and flipping that. And that's going to be dictated mainly by the seat counts in the classrooms. So if we're in a position where we can have everybody in the classroom, terrific, that's the goal. But if there are limitations from a social distancing standpoint about how many people can be in a classroom, we're going to do everything we can to maximize the space in the classroom, and then we're going to have an alternative delivery method. Faculty are preparing for that.
Right along those lines, I'll answer our next question, which is, if a student gets COVID-19 and needs to go home, will their instruction and classes continue online? The answer to that essentially is yes. We partner very closely with the Griff Center for Academic Achievement and have academic mentors within that area, and they help communicate along with our student athletes, with their professors, with any illness, if there's missing class time, whether it's for travel or practice, and the responsibility is on the student athlete to communicate, but they also assist when needed. So the anticipation would be classes would continue online if a student would have to go home due to COVID-19. Let's see here. What else we got? Bill, maybe you can help answer this next question. If phase 4 is required to open higher learning, what date would phase 4 need to be initiated to begin class in the fall?
Well, when I started all these discussions in the beginning of May, we thought June 1st was the date we were going to have definitive information, and I think that continues to slide. But I do say I feel things are moving in a positive direction. In terms of a definitive drop dead date, I don't know that there has been one that's established. I think we would, if we can make a decision by the beginning to the middle of June, I think that's what most schools are targeting for, then we would certainly do that. But I would tell you that if there's a possibility that we can be in person and that decision's made on August 1st or August 15th, then I think people would take that as opposed to saying we're not going to do it just because of a date. So we're going to continue to do everything we can to have people in person. I understand the challenges that places in terms of planning for folks that are coming from far away. I understand how that impacts those teams that aren't sure when their preseason is going to start. As soon as we can possibly provide that information, we will. But I also do believe that we will play that as far down the road as need be to try and make sure that we can have people on our campus in the fall.
Next one, Al. How do you envision the dining hall operating with social distancing?
Yeah, there are 3 different scenarios we have right now, and I'm not sure which one is actually going to be the one, but just to kind of give you an overview, like scenario 1, this would be like the most strict as it comes to distancing. This would be a takeout or delivery scenario only, where students could come and pick up prepackaged foods, no congregation in the dining hall. You have to leave the area to eat. So that's tier 1. The second tier would be sort of kind of the middle of the road, where we'd have some packaged meals that could be picked up and you could leave with, or you could take it to a table where there's limited seating, social distance requirements in place, and a cap number on the people in the dining hall at any particular time. Or just, takeaway period. The third tier, which is probably the least restrictive, is students could come to the dining hall and get served by staff, food service staff. There would be no like salad bars where you could do anything. Everything would be served to you. Limited seating in the dining hall. but nothing would be prepackaged. So the college, we're trying to work through that right now to figure out what is the best and safest option when we get here in the fall.
Great. Thank you so much, Al. We got one more question in the queue at the moment. Will there be campus tours available sometime in July?
I sure hope so. We have to continue our process, and we want to try and have people back on campus. So I think if the campus is open, then we would likely be open again for campus tours. I think we're all going to be living in an environment of social distancing and masks. But if we could provide campus tours, it's critically important to our process here on campus and on any campus, and we want to be able to provide that. So I do think that once the campus is open, we will be able to do that. When I mean by that, I don't mean open for all students to return, but I think open for administrative business.
Got some more rolling in here. I think, Bill, you can help answer this one, maybe Al too. Any chance of students returning home for Thanksgiving break and staying at home, taking finals from home, and then return after Christmas break to alleviate back and forth travel? If so, when would we have that scheduled to make arrangements?
Yeah, I would say that model has been discussed. It's been a model that's being employed by a number of different campuses. It's being discussed here at Canisius, and I think it is a possibility. The college will make that decision before the beginning of the semester. So I do expect that they will be making that decision to do it on a planned basis before the beginning of the semester. I would also say that, again, it's like everything, we have a disclaimer for everything. If something was to change from a test day or to have far more cases on campus, that's the prudent thing to do later because there's a big uptick in cases, then that may cause that. But I think if there's going to be a planned decision to do that, it would be done before the beginning of the semester.
Great. Thank you. Maybe Andy, Bill, you can help on this one. What role will coaches play in educating their athletes regarding proper hygiene, social distancing, etc., to stop the potential spread of COVID?
We actually met with the coaches today and explained that they are going to have a role in this. Their roles may change a little bit. Obviously, they will have a role in the education. We will be putting education pieces together. Under normal circumstances, I meet individually with each team to go through preseason education. And this year, obviously, hygiene will be part of that. Disinfecting will be part of that. Social responsibility will be part of that. Whether that is in person, I certainly hope it is, or it's on a Zoom call, or in a hybrid manner, we will do that. The coaches are in those meetings. They have an understanding of it, and they will play a role in it as well because they're going to have to play a role in hygiene, disinfecting, et cetera, during practices.
And I think I understand the difficult reconciliation, if you will, of we can only have a certain number of people in a locker room or a training room, but we're going to go out in a practice situation and run into each other. I understand the confusion there, and I think that's difficult to reconcile. But I would also say that if we're in a position in New York State where that's permitted, and for us to be able to practice, and that practices can be done safely, and we're also doing the spacing and the hygiene from a locker room, training room, and living standpoint, and that gets us to a positive place as an institution and as a society, we certainly want to do that. And I think we're not going to be able to account for every specific detail. The one way we can make sure everything happens is everybody stay home and no one leave their house. And I don't think that anybody believes that's the best way to go about this. We're looking to try and figure out what's the most practical way to go about it for us to take those precautions and do them the best way that we can and ask our student athletes and our coaching staff to be part of it. So our coaches are going to have a part of it, our staff's going to have a part of it, and certainly the individual students are going to have a part of it to try and make sure that we're all participating in this collectively.
Great, thank you. Bill, I think that's all the questions we had leading up. Oh, let's see, it looks like we got some more coming in here. Okay, here we go. Al, maybe you can help with this one. When will freshman student orientation be held if return on campus is set for August 31st? And will the fall athletes be mandated to attend if there's a conflict, and will the coaches be instructed to schedule around the event?
Well,
Loaded. That's a loaded one, Luke.
Well, typically speaking, orientation would take place on the Friday prior to the start of classes. And the orientation staff is working obviously on the best way to do that right now, whether it will happen on that Friday or the Saturday or the Thursday for that matter prior to classes. I'm not really sure yet. They haven't made that final decision, but it's going to be very close to the 31st. So that we're not bringing a lot of people back to campus any earlier than we need to. So once that decision is kind of ironed out and they have the schedule set, then that will be communicated to everybody what to expect.
Yeah, and the other part of that question is our student athletes are always required to participate in orientation even prior to COVID. So the coaches work and schedule around that orientation session. There are mandatory sessions. There are a couple sessions that are maybe a little bit more elective in that schedule that our coaches can have practices around, but those mandatory sessions throughout the orientation week are required by our student athletes, and that's really no change.
And I'd like to just clarify, the exceptions would be for the fall student athletes. All winter and spring student athletes would be required to attend orientation as schedule is. The lone exception would be for the fall student athletes who are typically in their season practicing. And that is where that exception Bill is talking about would come into play.
Well, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time here today. For those of you that were able to stick with us through the end, my hope is that the questions were informative. Andy Smith has given you his email. Al Pilato has given you his. Lisa, Erica, and I were all on our website as well. So if there are remaining questions, you can certainly ask us or the coaching staff members. I appreciate you taking the time today. I understand the concerns about deadlines and timing, and we will share those as quickly as we can as soon as we have them. But really appreciate your sons and daughters' commitment to Canisius College. You're interested in Canisius College. We look forward to having you back here on campus. Campuses are wonderful places with students. We need to have them around. Looking forward to have everybody back and being back in competition. So thank you very much for everything this evening, folks. Have a great night. Bye-bye.